I'm Father Dunne, and this is the Journey with God in Time that we were going to speak about tonight or this afternoon. I had two different preparations here. Is it not coming through? It says green there.
Can you just turn the volume up?
It is coming through. It just needs a little tweak on the volume.
Okay. How about that? Is it coming through more? More? I'm technologically challenged, but but I've got a technologist or technician over here. So let's see. How's that? Better? Let's see. How about that? Better? Louder. I used to I had Mass for some old brothers over there, and one of them was 100 years old, and I was right next to him, and talking, and he would always say, louder. Anyway, so a journey with God in time, and I prepared two different versions of this. One of them with show and tell, and the other starting off with those four little sentences: things are meant, there are signs, the heart speaks, there is a way. But let me try the show and tell version, and because that's one I haven't used here before. And it's coming through okay? Huh? Louder? Won't go louder? Yeah, it won't go any louder.
There's some seats over here for those who really have to hear.
Uh-huh. What? I can hold it up, yeah. Uh-huh.
Why don't you just come on down? There's seats in the front.
Seats down here, you can hear really well.
So, how about this? Well, a journey with God in time. Now, usually in class, I always recommend to the students that they keep a log, a spiritual diary, and if you keep a log, you get the feeling that you're on a voyage, that like a ship's log, and that gives you this sense of being on a journey in time or a voyage. This series of paintings here is by Thomas Cole in the middle of the 19th century, and it's called The Voyage of Life, and there's four of them. They go with this is the first one, the childhood, and then there's youth, and then adulthood, and then old age. I'm in that fourth one, but you maybe are mostly in the third one. And how about that? But maybe not. But, anyway, let me start with a quote from Ursula Le Guin. It's in a story of hers called A Fisherman of the Inland Sea. She says their story the life story is our only boat for sailing on the river of time. But in the great rapids and the winding shallows, no boat is safe. Well, you'll see further on, this is just the beginning, but you'll see further on the great rapids and then the winding shallows. The great rapids go with adulthood, and the winding shallows with old age. But there's another more positive aspect of old age, as we'll see, rising to the light. This first one then shows the. Can you see the thing? Okay, the boat is coming out of this dark cave, which is the womb, and the angel is there behind the little child. Little child has his arms up. He's seeing the wonder of the world. And he's coming then starting into the voyage. Notice here in this first one, the angel is still with him, right behind him. Now, in the second one, no, that's the third one. Here it is, that's it. Now that has to be moved. Oh, how's that? No. The second one, what? Okay. In the second one, youth, notice the angel now has stepped out of the, I take the first one, childhood, to be the first 15 years of life. And this now is the second 15 years, youth. And Thomas Cole, the painter, was British, but he came to this country and he became one of the Hudson Valley School of painting. And anyway, notice that the angel is waving farewell, and the youth has his hand on the tiller. So he's taking over. And in the distance, there's this ideal city. So his ideals at this point. Then, in the third one, yes, there, if you can see it, there he is. This is adulthood, manhood, it says. And notice the divine figure is behind him, out of sight. He's on his knees, praying like mad. And he's heading into the rapids, into the great rapids. And this is very true to life. Very true. And manhood, or adulthood rather, this is a time of crisis in the life. He's praying like mad, but the divine figure is out of sight, is behind him up there where he can't see it. And then in the, I'm probably forgetting half the stuff I was going to say here, but anyway, in the last one, there's old age. And That's where I think I am right now, 83 years old. So notice the angels are back, and he's looking up. Can you see him there? He's looking up along the line of the light, and he's clearly what he's supposed to do is go along the line of the light. And in this last stage, the problem is the winding shallows, as Ursula Le Guin. So she says, in the great rapids and the winding shallows, no boat is safe. So in one aspect of old age is winding shallows. The other aspect is rising to the light. And that's the positive aspect. So the whole thing is very hopeful in the end. It's looking towards eternal life. I think I'm going to throw in the 4 sentences anyway that I would have started with. And they are from Tolkien. Things are meant, there are signs, the heart speaks, there is a way. Once one of my, it's still coming through, okay? Once one of my former students, she wrote me and said she had 3 of them, and she wanted the 4th, and she called them the 4 spiritual truths. And that upped the ante a bit, because I just call them 4 little sentences from Tolkien, but to call them the 4 spiritual truths, it sounds like the 4 truths of Buddha, in Buddhism, but it's not the same as those. Things are meant. That's a important one. And what it means, there's a little quote I have here from Jim Henson. You know Jim Henson, with the creator of the Muppets. And he wrote a thing called The Dark Crystal. It was made into a movie. And he had these 2 characters, Jen and Kira, and they met. And he said, now they had to trust each other, or else the world, transformed by their chance meeting, would become a place without meaning or future after all, a place merely of chance. So what he's saying there is that things are meant like they're meeting, but it depends on us entering into the relationship, trusting each other. It depends on that, the meeting. But if you don't trust each other, then the meeting is just a chance meeting. I think of it's like the South Shore goes to Chicago from here. You get on the South Shore, and it stops at different places, and the doors open. And if no one gets on or off, they just open and then they close again, and it moves on. And that's the way it is if we don't enter into a relationship, into trusting. So the meaning, things are meant, depends on that entering into relationship. The second one, there are signs. That occurs a lot in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, but I'll give my own example of it. What happened was I had cancer in the left lung, and the surgeon removed the upper lobe of the left lung, and you know how I didn't know this bit of anatomy, but some of you may be doctors too, but I didn't know this bit of anatomy. But on the right side, there are 3 lobes. But on the left side, there's only 2 because there's the heart is there. And so the upper left lobe is the bigger one, and that was taken out. Dr. Moriarty told me the lower lobe is expanding and learning to do the whole job. So in the meantime, but what I was going to say is this, that a year or 2 later, there was a recurrence. And then I assembled an army of prayer. How about that? An army of prayer. I got the students to pray, not in class, but on their own. And also my friend Kathy in town here, who has a direct line to God. And the tests were all at first positive, but then all of a sudden all the symptoms disappeared, and the tests all came out negative. And after the final test, an MRI, the cancer doctor, Dr. Dunne in town, with a big smile on her face, said, "No cancer." And she didn't get to say that often to patients. And Dr. Moriarty said I should apply for a lottery ticket. But anyway, I thought it was an answer to prayer. It's a sign. And the sign was that God is there. God is there. And that's meant a lot more even than being cured. Just that God is there. I needed that. The third thing is the heart speaks. That is, the heart speaks. That's really essential. And in the story, The Lord of the Rings, you have to wait for the heart to speak. So they're going down the great river, and at last, Strider says, "My heart speaks clearly at last." And so you have to wait on the heart to speak. And more about that in a minute. And then finally, there is a way even when it seems that there is no way in one's life. And that is something. Now, let me try and say something that'll put this all together. That there is something I learned in my first years of teaching here. When I came from Rome, and I thought I knew a lot of things. And anyway, I had read Jean-Paul Sartre, and he said, I kind of bought into this. He said, you choose your essence. You choose it, what you're going to be. And that's your essence. But I learned here, teaching students, that they weren't just choosing, they were discovering their way. And so that meant that you didn't just choose, you discovered, you found your way. That led to a different conception of life. It's like driving on the highway at night. When you drive on the highway at night, your headlights illumine just a patch of road ahead of you, and you move into that patch. Then they illuminate a further patch. You move into that patch. So what happens is that we are led, as it were, one step at a time. You know Newman's song, Lead Kindly Light. And it goes, lead kindly light amid the encircling gloom, lead thou me on. The night is dark, and I am far from home. Lead thou me on. Keep thou my feet, I do not ask to see the distance seen. One step enough for me. That one step enough for me, that's the thing. I gave a retreat once for Presbyterian ministers in Western Illinois, and I told them about this poem and about this idea, being led one step at a time out of the heart. And I said I'd never heard this sung, but I knew it was a song also. Well, the next time they came in with their hymnals, and they all sang it for me. And they're all big singers, of course, Presbyterian ministers, both men and women. And they really sang it, and it was great. But the driving on the highway at night, that image is very true, then, of the way of one's life. Now, this leads in... Here now the two preparations coincide. This leads into the idea of the heart's desire. And I know the description of this thing was all about the road not taken. That's by Robert Frost. And this leads us right into the idea of the heart's desire. Just the last stanza of the thing. I've got the whole thing here, but I won't read it all. The last stanza is, I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Well, that problem of the road taken and the road not taken in life is, of course, the one that the students here are basically facing. If I take this road of this life work, am I still coming through? Okay. If I take this road, let's say I become a doctor, or I become a lawyer, or I become a teacher, then I have not taken other roads. Also, if I marry this person, then I've not married this other person. And if I go into this community, then I've not gone into that religious community. I've not gone in to marriage. So there's always a road not taken in one's life. And that creates a problem. And what is the solution to that? Well, I think that it's what I call the heart's desire, that the road of the heart's desire is the true road for me. What is the heart's desire? That is the question. And here's a quote from Martin Buber. It's in a little book called The Way of Man. I have them read that now in class. We each have in us something precious that is in no one else, he says. But this precious something is revealed to us only if we truly perceive our strongest feeling, our central wish, that in us which stirs our inmost being. So it's getting into the heart that we find the heart's desire. What is it? I had a conversation once with René Girard. Maybe you've heard of him. He teaches out at Stanford. I think he's retired now. But we were on a panel together in Berkeley, and then we were afterwards over at the Noonans for dinner, and we were talking. And I knew that he believed that all desire is mimetic, as he calls it. That is, we see what other people want, and we want what they want. And I said, but what about heart's desire? And he said, what do you mean by that? And I started trying to describe it. And he said, that sounds to me like peace, inner peace, not desire. And then I said, but peace is desirable. and so he thought about that. We let it go. And I hear now that he speaks of not only mimetic desire, but inmost desires. And the inmost desire, I think, is what I mean by heart's desire. And what is this desire? Well, I think that of course, it's modified by the circumstances of one's life, but that what it is, well, there's a line in Dante that kind of indicates it. Matthew Arnold thought this was the greatest line in poetry, but at any rate, it's a great one, and it's in the Paradiso. And Dante meets this woman, Picarda, and she's in the bottom of heaven. And he says, he's kind of embarrassed to ask this, but he says, wouldn't you rather be higher up there in heaven? And she says, when she understands what he's trying to say, she says, oh, no, his will is our peace, God's will. So his will is our peace. That's the criterion of the heart's desire. So it's the road on which I find inner peace. And in other words, like the students here are all very gifted and they can take many different roads. But what counts, though, is the road on which they find inner peace. That's the criterion of the heart's desire. So that road is the true road. A further thought, what am I doing? A further thought is, well, these roads split, as Robert Frost says. The two roads diverged in a yellow wood. And sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves, no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling all this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Well, that leads me to this idea. It's an idea that comes up in a story called Babette's Feast by Isaac Dennison, that is Karen Blixen. And maybe you've seen that movie, Out of Africa, and Meryl Streep plays Isaac Dennison in that. She's a great storyteller. And anyway, in this story, golly, it's complicated, so I won't tell the whole story. I'll just come to the point that in the end, the road not taken can rejoin the road taken. That might be especially relevant for us. We're further on. I tell the students about this, but this comes up later in one's life. And for me, now I have a simple example, whereas the story, Babette's Feast, has a real difficult example about being in love. But here's my simple example, that I was debating between, when I was in college here, I was already in the seminary, and I was debating whether to go into the way of words or the way of music. And I chose the way of words, as you can see, way of words. But in these later years, I found that the way of music, I did keep up a little music during the years, like, I started when I was 3 years old, picking out melodies on the piano. And I directed the four-part choir over in Rome when I was there. But I didn't really go into music. And then these later years, I started writing these musicals, the whole bunch of them. And we've performed them here. The students, with the students, you have great talent, and you don't have to pay them. And so I get them, but the thing is to get them to practice. That's difficult. But anyway, we put on a bunch of them, starting with one called The Church of the Poor Devil, and on one after another. And I have dancers too, and usually just one dancer, like for The Church of the Poor Devil, The Golden Key. But then I started having several dancers, and so I got the dance teacher from St. Mary. Then you have to coordinate them. And when there's just one, she can do it herself. But when there's many, then you've got to have coordination. And so we put them on, all those things. And finally, you've got one book has a CD in it. Can you believe it? It's called A Symphony of Songs. And I have this, her name was, it's not Alzheimer's, it's just clutter. You have to think that of yourself, too. That's what I tell myself. But this, so we put that on. We made a recording of it. It's 3 movements and singing all through. But this is something, but the main road for me is still the way of words, as you can see. Words, words, words. And so the last, I'm using up a lot of time, but I was going to leave time for questions, but here's one more big point. And following Christ. And what this is, I explain this to the students, and they seem to really get it, that what following Christ is making his God my God. He says to Mary Magdalene, my Father and your Father, my God and your God. So this is in Gospel of John, chapter 20, next to last chapter. So he's risen, and he's talking to Mary Magdalene. And Mary Magdalene is supposed to tell the others. So he's going to my Father and your Father, my God and your God. And he calls God Abba. When I first went to Israel, I went 3 different times for this Hope seminar. And the first time was it was back in 1974. And I arrived there in Tel Aviv, and I was behind a woman coming back from New York with her children. She was Israeli, but she had been in New York. And then her husband was waiting on the other side, and he was looking for them. And then he spotted them. They were right in front of me, came around, and he picked up the little girl who was 2, and he was holding her. And she was pinching his cheek and saying, Abba, 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 Abba. And I knew that Jesus called God Abba, but I'd never seen or heard the word used in actual conversation. But there was that little girl, Abba, 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 Abba. So that really hit me. And what following Christ is making his Abba my Abba. And so I make his God my God. And that means I can act this out. I'm not, see now, this way I do it in class. Here I am, and over here, more room. Over here is Christ. And I step in to where he stands. I make his Abba my Abba. And he then lives in me, and I in him. And I make his God my God. So what he's saying to Mary Magdalene is, my Abba and your Abba, my God and your God. And that's the key to following Christ. You make his God your God. And that God is a God of unconditional love. And so it's when I step into that place, I'm bombarded with this unconditional love. Most of our love is conditional. I love you if you love me, or I love you if you are the person I think you are. The ifs are there. But unconditional love is dropping all the ifs. And that's what it is in the following of Christ. Does that make sense to you? That's what it means to follow Christ. I tell the students this over and over, so they've really got this in mind. And well, I had what should we do? I have a last quote here. Go with the last quote. All right. This is the King's Speech. I didn't see that movie, King's Speech, where King George VI is practicing. He's stuttering and he's trying to learn to speak correctly and everything. But at any rate, he gave this talk in 1939 when the Blitz was going on in England, and it was the darkest moment. It was his Christmas talk. And he quoted this poem by Mimi Louise Haskins. She's not very well known, but this particular piece of it is very well known because he used it. And it goes like this. I said to the man who stood at the gate of the year, give me a light that I may tread safely into the unknown. And he replied, go out into the darkness and put your hand into the hand of God. That shall be to you better than light and safer than a known way. So notice that. Give me a light that I may tread safely. Oh, who is the man who stood at the gate of the year? I think that's Christ. And so I asked, give me a light that I may tread safely into the unknown. And he replies, go out into the dark. Put your hand into the hand of God. That shall be to you better than light and safer than a known way. So it's got that idea then of following Christ. And it's that idea of making his Abba my Abba and trusting. That's what I get from that. Does that make sense to you? And hope it does. Well, how about there's a few minutes left. We could have questions. Yes.
What you're describing seems to be about individual choices and individual relationship with God, but not to make it more complicated, but what if you make a choice and society or people in authority tell you you can't make that choice, or you're not allowed to make that choice, or that's not an option for you?
Yeah. So what if? And that it seems I'm not sure what would be an example.
You were called to the priesthood. That was
Yes.
a road you chose.
Right.
Maybe predetermined in the way you're describing it.
Uh-huh.
You found it. You didn't choose it.
Yes.
You found it. So what if a woman had that exact same calling? Then what do they do when they make the choice?
Yeah. Well, it may require a change in the institutional church. So that, yeah, but the new pope is seemingly, well, I don't know, but he's making very good gestures, so we can hope for the best. But, would there be some more questions? Don't hesitate. Where? Oh, okay.
The concept of inner peace and heart's desire
Yes.
seem to me somewhat antithetical, because a heart's desire, by definition, wants to move a person forward in some way or two,
Yes.
and yet inner peace suggests contentment.
Yes.
Don't they seem antithetical to you?
No. No, they don't. They like in my well, it's that thing with René Girard that I was, and he he asked me. Well, he says that our desires are all imitative and mimetic, and he's got a real big theory built on that. Like violence is mimetic too, like the Arabs do something and the Israelis do it back to them, and in Northern Ireland, the Protestants do something, the Catholics do it back to them, and it keeps the Hatfields and the McCoys, that it's like that. So violence is mimetic, and so he thinks desire is mimetic, but heart's desire is not like mimetic desire, seeing what other people want and wanting what they want, or wanting to get back in the same way they got you. But heart's desire is connected with peace, inner peace. And so what you do is you're looking for the road of inner peace. And that's the road. That's the true road, you might say, in a life. Hammarskjöld has a quote there, if I can think of it. He says, if I can think of it, I need to have it before me. But let me think. He says, there's many roads, in your, talking to himself, in your imagination, you think of this and that and the other. But there's only one in which there is a congruence of the chooser and the chosen. A congruence of the chooser and the chosen. This congruence is fit, in other words, a fit of the two. And so on this road. So he has it that there is only one true road for each person. That's kind of a extreme view, as it seems, but I think it's true. But there's a lot of further things there. It doesn't mean that there's no change or anything. Am I making sense there to you? Yes.
In our sinful world and in our sinful lives, we make a choice, many choices that perhaps do not work out. Or
Yes.
we think that they're the road we want to go, and then it fails or it does not work out.
Right.
How do you speak to that in terms of eventually finding where you were meant to go? How does that come about? Are there many different roads that bring you to a place?
If I could, well, I don't know if I can't do it here, but there's a blackboard I know, but I would draw a big circle and call this the human circle, and that we're all located on this human circle somewhere by the circumstances of our life, and there's a center point, which I'll call the heart's desire, and that means there's a radial path going from the place on the circumference to the center, and that radial path is the path of the heart's desire. But going back to your question, you can get off that path. You can get off, and so you deviate. But then you can take a new sighting on the heart's desire and still come then through. So the actual life it can be sort of a crooked path, but it's possible though to again and again take a new sighting and from where you are and go towards that. You can envision that. Yes.
I love your idea that we discover our path as well as make choices. Life doesn't have so many choices, I find, as I found myself this way, and so I go with it. It reminds me of Michelangelo's wonderful works, where he said he was freeing the image that was inside the marble. So he was just chipping away at it, and it came forward.
Yes. There's in the Stories of God by Rilke, there's one on Michelangelo, and that idea of I quote that a lot, this Rilke Stories of God. One thing he says in there is there's nothing wiser than the circle. Nothing wiser than the circle. So what I imagine is this great circle coming from God and going to God, this huge circle. And this is different than the paths that I had there a minute ago. In class, I use a big circle to make this one. And so God is at the top, and everything coming from God so it moves clockwise, and everything returning to God. But there's a far point on the circle down at the bottom. That's where we are in a secular age. And what I'm hoping is that this secular age is not an end point, but a turning point, that we are to go through and on. I got this, of all things, from the Summa of St. Thomas, that in the Summa he has the first part, everything coming from God, the second part, everything returning to God, and the third part, Christ the way. And then I saw that he got it from Plotinus, Neoplatonism, from the coming is the emanation of everything from the one, and the epistrope, the return of everything to the one. But what I've added is the far point on the circle where we are in a secular age. And in the individual soul, it can be the dark night of faith. One of my favorite people is Saint Therese of Lisieux. Saint Therese really went through it. Did you ever see that movie, Therese? It's a French movie, and it does a bang-up job on the dark night of the soul. Therese goes through it. She says, it's like a wall going all the way up to the stars. And in her story of a soul, it's those are words right out of it. And she says, I want to believe. And in the end, she speaks with confidence. She says she's dying of tuberculosis. And she says, I do not die. I enter into life. And, I really talk her up with the students, and a lot of them in the religion and autobiography course, right on Therese, But I remember seeing that movie, Therese, with this Jewish friend, Minna Silverberg. And Minna was absolutely freaked out by that movie. And, so it was a challenge from a Jewish point of view. Wow, we're getting down to it. One more question. Yeah, George.
I take it from having taken classes from you many, many years ago and all, and seeing this again today. Mm-hmm. Is not what you are saying to us, at least this is what I kind of got out of it, to connect the journey of the heart's desire to your other little thing, which I think brings stepping over the shoes. Doesn't the journey of the heart's desire bring the peace you're talking about?
Yes.
When you are, because of that journey and that desire, able to take that step into Jesus' Our Father and making
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I always thought. That's what you said to me 50 years ago.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
That's been driving me crazy.
I'm always saying the same thing. Yeah. Well, Garrigou Lagrange, he said, I had him as a teacher once. Ooh, what a guy! But Garrigou said of himself, I always write the same book. And that's me too. I've now got 19 of them, and it's always the same book. But so.
Who took a John Dunne course while they were here? John, I just want to say on behalf of everybody who took your course and those who haven't, thank you for your service to the university, and thank you for being a